Thanks for tuning in to the Teen Sports Podcast Network, where teens throughout the U.S. and their show guests tackle today's sports topics and issues from a teen perspective. And now, here's your host of the Teen Sports Podcast Network Illinois, Andrew Kish.
Thank you for tuning in to the Teen Sports Podcast Network Illinois. I'm your host, Andrew Kish. In today's episode, my guest is Cooper Huskey, a current news media major at the University of Alabama and a former student and graduate of the YSN Sports Broadcasting Academy. I just want to thank you, Cooper, for taking the time to be my guest today.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. Have fond memories of YSN, so it's glad to be back.
I'm super thrilled to have you today, but before we get started, I want to give our viewers and listeners a quick rundown of today's game plan. In the first half, we're going to be talking about Cooper's education life and his media experiences so far. And then in the second half, we're going to be talking about our topic and issue of the day, the most unbreakable record in sports. More on that later, though. I have a lot of things to ask you, Cooper, as you've had a lot of similar experiences as I have so far. So I just want to start with the big one, and that as you are a former student of the YSN Sports Broadcasting Academy, like I am myself right now, what was your experience in the academy like?
So my experience in the academy was a lot of fun. It was a lot of Sunday nights, on WebEx or the predecessor to Zoom, just, talking it out. Learning from Jaime, connecting with other students. I got to meet a lot of cool people, listen to a lot of cool people in the industry, and it led to an experience to shadow somebody, which was pretty interesting.
Yeah, so like you had just mentioned, one of the experiences you had was your shadowing day at WPIX on Channel 4. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, so Brian Jackson, who was the sports reporter for Channel 4 at the time, had come on the air or come into the class and talked to us. And Jaime had arranged for a meeting between him and I, and that led to, a day to shadow him. So it was a weekend day. My whole family got to go, and we just hung out in the news station from like 2 to 7, just watching him do his job and his work, collecting highlights, writing voiceovers, and just planning out his whole sports broadcast. And I want to say it was that experience that really led me to like, okay, you know what, if I can do this for a living, this is what I want to do. And so that was very influential. Brian Jackson was very influential, and that led me to the University of Alabama, where I have been following that dream, and we're going to graduate in a week. So gotta turn that dream into a reality.
That's incredible. Hey, congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
I'm still at the beginning of my journey, but I'm super happy to hear the success you've had, especially from using the YSN broadcasting experiences. So like you had just said, you're at the University of Alabama now. There's plenty of schools out there that have media school, as I'm looking to go to Indiana University myself. What made you choose the University of Alabama?
You're gonna make me pitch the school. Okay, let's do this. So yeah, when I was looking at colleges, my main thing was I wanted to go to a big southeastern school. I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida. Grew up a huge Gators fan, and so the SEC was where I wanted to end up, even though I wasn't that involved on the athletic side of athletics. I wanted to be on the communication side, and I figured the SEC was the big chance. So I applied to Florida, and then my junior year of high school, I took a big college road trip with my family. We went to South Carolina, Auburn, Alabama, Mississippi State, LSU. I think we started off at Clemson, which isn't the SEC, but, close enough.
Yeah.
Big Southern school, good at football. And so everywhere I was going, it was like, yeah, this is good, but I want to stay in my home state of Florida. I am a very home-driven guy, love Florida, love that state, want to, find a job there one day, grow old there. And every other school was making me just love Florida more until I got to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And that's where everything just seemed a little bit brighter. The people were nicer. The equipment was newer. Everything was just a little better. And I've come to learn that that's because of the football team. You can only invest so much money into the facility there that all those championships and all those sponsorships, that money had to go to somewhere else, and it eventually went to the communication school and given us one of the best schools in the country. So just, it was the people, it was the equipment, it was the opportunities that would be and were provided to me as a student. So I would recommend anybody looking to go into broadcast journalism, sports play-by-play, or just anything inside that news multimedia bubble, come to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Very easy scholarships to attain that will take off a lot of the out-of-state price, and you will love your time here. And hey, you may even win a national championship or two.
Honestly, like that's a great pitch right there. Anybody at Alabama would probably be very pleased to hear everything you just had to say.
Oh,
so
exactly. I expect some money.
Yeah,
Come on, Alabama, pay me.
It's sponsored segment right there.
Yes.
So you had mentioned that you were looking at all these schools. So at that time, were you like, did you have all these applications out, or were you just like shopping around at the time?
I was shopping around at the time. I didn't start putting in my applications till about fall senior year. And I applied to every school I toured, but my main two were Florida and Alabama. And it just came down to Alabama was nicer, and they actually wanted me. I was getting handwritten notes from the recruiting staff there. They were just actively recruiting, some kid from Jacksonville, Florida, to move 8 hours away in Alabama. And so that was really what drove me to Alabama. Not a knock on Florida. They are a really good school. But there, I was getting lost in the numbers. I was student 1,000, applying. And so Alabama, I was Cooper Huskey who was applying. And so that's what led me to UA. And what I recommend to all of our young viewers out there who are looking at colleges and universities to go to, you know what? There are going to be some schools that kind of like, they're like the highbrow, like the we'll contact you. And that's cool at the start. But when it gets down to like crunch time and to pick a school, go where they want you. Alabama wanted me. So that's what led to my decision there.
That had to have been an incredible feeling, having a school like driving towards you, because you originally had that mindset, okay, this is Florida, this is where I want to go. But not only did the better school have more of a drive to get you as a student there, but it was what you wanted to do. So that's super cool, and I couldn't imagine the feeling you had at that time.
Exactly.
So what was it like when you got accepted?
Oh, that was amazing. I think I played Sweet Home Alabama by Leonard Skinner at least 6 times on repeat. They were actually the second school to accept me. The first one was Mississippi State, and so I annoyed my neighbors by ringing a cowbell for about 2 days. And afterwards, I got the acceptance to Alabama, and I just knew, that's it. We're going to Tuscaloosa.
So like I plan to do. At Alabama, you're studying media news, that whole, like you said, the bubble. What is it like being this type of major?
Oh, it's a lot of fun. It's really interesting work, and you're really close with your classmates and your students. Here at Alabama, CNIS, I believe, is one of the smallest colleges at the whole university, so it's a lot of close-knit classes. You share a lot of classes together, and then outside, you're doing internships together. So we have a TV station and a radio station. So I will be in class with somebody, then go to the TV station, see them working another job, and, then go to the radio station the next day and see them doing the same job as well. So we're just all close. It's a very close-knit community, and it's fun work. There's a reason we all want to get into this business, and that's because we have a joy and passion for sharing stories, and if you're on the sports side, talking about sports. And so every day is a blast.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've had my beginnings were I kind of relate to that, because when I had first started, I was young. When I was young, I always liked making little movies and videos and stuff, but I really liked putting the stuff together and adding like effects on. It was like Windows Movie Maker I used when I was a little kid. We just had like, a rinky-dinky family computer with nothing too special. But when I got into high school, we had a radio and TV class, and I actually wasn't taking it. One of my buddies was like, oh yeah, it's super fun. And I was in a business class at the time, and I really didn't want to be in that business class. It was like an extra class that I didn't need. So I transferred over to the radio and TV. And though I had always, growing up, had a love for like video and stuff, I never realized this is something I can do. So being able to like you had just mentioned, it would be my dream to do this, because not only do I do it for fun, I would be doing it as a career. And I think about something my father had always said to me growing up: if you have a job you love, you never have to work a day in your life. And I based on your resume, I can attest to that. You probably feel the same way.
Oh yes, I've never had a job. I've always had, just a very fun life. Um, the most recent thing was this past weekend. I went to Talladega with the TV station. It was my first NASCAR race, and that was just awesome. My shift was from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. But that wasn't 13 hours of work. That was 13 hours of fun. Going to a NASCAR race, getting to experience that, hear the cars, and just feel the vibrations as they drive by. And then once it was all over, I just had to put together a 90-second movie about the day. And I mean, that is the best thing in the world.
Absolutely. I see. If I had an experience like that, I would be struggling to keep it in 90 seconds. It's just, love that kind of stuff. So, since starting the university life, you've had to have probably had a lot of experiences, media world and just regular college life. So, since starting the university life, what are some of the most valuable experiences you've learned?
So, most valuable experiences I've had is with WVUA 23, our on-campus TV station. That really gave me the look into what an MMJ does. And that's kind of the career path I'm going to take from here, looking for jobs in those MMJ positions, mainly sports, but maybe we'll go into news. We'll see how things shake out. But that's been really beneficial. You learn how to cut packages there. You learn how to do voiceovers, write stories for the web, because you put together the movie, but then you also have to write the story. Like, don't think just because we are in media, there's no more writing. Oh, there is writing. So you have to do all the writing and post that online, and that's just been awesome. Then at the radio station, like I said, that's where you can have more of a free form opportunity. That they give you an hour a week if you're in the sports department to do the radio show, which we call the student section. And so that's where you just get to talk about whatever you want in the sports world. This past Monday, me and my buddy, we did a draft preview where we just previewed the NFL draft, and then we got in touch with a former UA alumnus who is also a reporter for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And so since they are picking number one, we brought him onto the show and just asked him, hey, where are the Jags picking? And even he couldn't tell us, so it'll be very interesting. I know this show will air after the draft, so people watching will be like, oh, it's obviously so-and-so. So don't tell us yet, viewer.
So, you are one step away. Like you said at the beginning of the show, you have 1 week until you're out in the media world finally. What is that feeling like, finally being just a week away from your dream?
Oh, it's exciting, but it's nerve-wracking, because you're on your own now. There's no more structure to tell you, okay, you have to do this. I can go anywhere in the country and just gotta pick the place that fits best for me. And so we're looking at jobs all over the place. I have a map right here. Every time I apply, I put a push pin in, and it's exciting. Just gotta keep applying and wait for someone to reach back, and that'll be the dream come true.
So I know you have a lot of new experiences coming up now that you're finally going into the field, but as somebody who has gone through the entire learning process, you got to have a lot of good tips and knowledge on the field already. So if someone young had come up to you and they're like, hey, I want to be a news anchor, or I want to be a sports broadcaster, what is some advice you would want to give them?
The advice I would say is say yes. You're in college, everything is taken care of for you. Just say yes. If the TV station asks you to do this, say yes. If a professor says, hey, I need help covering this, just say yes, because that will lead you to other opportunities in the future. And so you'll be able to do more, but the first thing you have to do is start yes. And if nobody's asking you to where you can say yes, ask them. Hey, what can I do to help? Do you need me to come in tomorrow or something like that? And just always be forward and asking, what more is there I can do?
That's that, with that mindset, you had to have been a pretty successful student at Alabama, I'm assuming.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's what we like to hear. Well, learning about someone who's currently studying media at a big name university like yourselves sure has been a great experience, and it has. You gave me some helpful nuggets that I'll have to keep in mind now that I'm finally putting applications into schools myself. We're going to go ahead and move forward from this segment now, though, and we're going to get ready to discuss our topic of the day, the most unbreakable records in sports. We're going to be talking about this and more right after this short message.
You're in high school, serious about your future, and have a real desire to be near the action. Hi, Andrew Monaco, voice of the Texas A&M Aggies here. If you have an interest in a sports broadcasting career, the YSN Masterclass for high school students is your ticket. An online, on-demand series of video lessons conducted by sports industry professionals ready to help fast-track your sports broadcasting career. Learn more and register today at ysnacademy.com, ysnacademy.com.
Welcome back to the Teen Sports Podcast Network, Illinois. I'm your host, Andrew Kish, currently here with Cooper Huskey, a current news media major at the University of Alabama, and a former graduate and student of the YSN Sports Broadcasting Academy. We just finished talking about Cooper's past and future in the media world, but now we're going to be getting into the topic and issue of the day, being the most unbreakable record in sports. I've done a lot of reading on this because, I watch a lot of sports. Obviously, we're in the Teen Sports Podcast Network, but I had to really think about this topic because there's so many different records out there, even small ones that get broken every day. But I want to go by different sports. I know you're a fan of baseball, but we're going to go ahead and I want to start with basketball because that is my main sport. That is my baby. Been watching the Bulls finally in the playoffs. It's been a great experience. And the first one that comes to mind to many people is anything related to Wilt Chamberlain. As everyone knows, Wilt Chamberlain was he was not human. He was otherworldly with the things that he would do on the basketball court. One of the craziest records he's known for is he used to average 50 points per game back in the 61-62 season. A lot of people talk about his record for 100 points in a game, but there's been people who've gotten close. Kobe Bryant had 81 points, and that was semi in the modern era, more of the early 2000s, which is more 90s-ish basketball. But that's, with the increase in scoring, the amount of people having 30 points per game, 40 points per game, or not points per game, but like just scoring outlets like that in one night, it's increasing. So I don't necessarily think 100 points in a game is unbreakable anymore. I would not be surprised if we saw that in the next 10 years or so, just because of some of the crazy. I mean, Devin Booker, when he was in his early 20s, dropped a 70-point game. I mean, imagine what the youth could do moving forward. But Wilt Chamberlain's 50 points per game average for an entire season is something I don't think we'll ever see again. Excluding himself, the only person who ever came close was Michael Jordan. He averaged almost 37. Well, actually, over 37 points, which even though it's a crazy number to look at, it's still pretty far away from Wilt Chamberlain's 50 points per game.
It is minuscule in compared to that.
Yeah. Another record I think about is the most assists in a game. In regards to basketball, everybody knows about John Stockton. He was an incredible point guard. He had well over 15,000 assists recorded in his NBA career. The only person I could think of in the modern NBA who could even come close is Chris Paul. But, Chris Paul is 36 and he's still 5,000 assists away. So, that's the only person who's even come somewhat close. And so I think that's a record that will never be touched. Do you have any other NBA or just basketball records in general that come to mind?
Yeah, well, what's coming to my mind is Bill Russell and his 11 or 12 NBA championships, I believe. I think it was
11 rings. Yeah.
11 rings, and I don't think that will be touched by anybody in all the sports, honestly, just because of the sheer number of teams that we have in the league, or in all the leagues nowadays. And it's wonderful. Love expansion teams, love bringing the sport to more people across the nation. But with the NBA, there are 30 teams vying for that spot, 16 make the playoffs. No one is going to be able to win 11 rings in their career ever again because just the amount of dominance you would need for that. Like, even the GOAT, Michael Jordan, only has 6. And those 6 were awesome and amazing, and I loved watching The Last Dance and learning all about them. But you're never going to see 11 again just because of the sheer number of teams there are, the number of good players there are in the league.
Yeah, I believe when Bill Russell, this could be incorrect, this is just off the top of my head, but I believe there was only 8 teams at the time. I'm not 100% sure if that's the case, but compared to the 30 now, that's crazy. And only half of the NBA, well, a little over half, because there's 8 teams in each conference that will go to the playoffs. It'll be a total of 16. But like with the elimination and just it's just so unlikely. I mean, the only person who could have came close was LeBron because of his entire stint from Miami all the way up till he went to the Lakers. He was in the finals every single year, which was crazy. Obviously, he doesn't have a winning record, but I mean, still on that alone is another thing that's. I remember reading someone. This I guess could be considered an unbreakable record. It was a list of like the teams that had the most like championship appearances, not just, the championship ones, but just finals appearances. That's the better term to use. And LeBron James himself, as just one player, was 4th on that list.
Wow.
So there was, I think it was top 5. It was very close, but there was only like 3 or 4 teams like as an entire like franchise that had more appearances. That obviously I think it was Warriors and then Celtics, Lakers, and there may have been another team. But LeBron James, as a player, has had at a minimum has had more finals appearances than at least 20 teams in the NBA. So it's just that kind of stuff is crazy to think about.
And to just build off of that, he has the 4th most finals appearances of anybody in the league, if you're counting him as a single team. And he still has a losing record, just pointing to how phenomenal Bill Russell's record is.
Yes.
So, like, LeBron got close, but he could never get there. And that's just why I think 11 championships you will never see ever again in any sport. You can talk about Brady. Brady has 7 rings, and we thought he retired. He's coming back, but he probably only has 1 more year left, so the max he can have is 8. So we're never going to see 11 ever again.
Yeah, it's a crazy number.
Yes.
Well, on the topic of football and the the player Tom Brady, he has a record that I think is actually pretty impressive, and that's his career touchdown passes. He's currently number 1, and of course it'll keep growing. But at the time of this recording, he has 624 touchdown passes, which is a crazy number for football. Obviously, in the modern era, there's a lot more people who are getting closer and closer. But I mean, he's 44 and he's still going, so that number is going to grow. The next closest person is Drew Brees, but he retired in 21. And I mean, I guess Peyton Manning could have a chance, but I with Tom Brady coming back for another season just to grow that number, I don't think that's going to be something that's going to be touched ever. I mean, it's possible. It's more possible than some of the other numbers that we've talked about, but I think that's something that's just very unlikely to ever happen.
Definitely. Yeah, Tom Brady is just he's a different beast when it comes to, talking about sports and records. Like, I think there should be 2 different categories when talking about football records. Tom Brady and then everybody else. Just give everybody else a chance.
Yeah, he's definitely an anomaly when it comes to like just sports. I mean, there's a lot of players that like in different sports like that, but Tom Brady is crazy. Back to basketball, LeBron James, he's in his upper 30s and he's still playing like he's better than majority of the league, so that's crazy. But Tom Brady is on another level when it comes to longevity. He is 44 and he's still playing the way he is. Just I don't understand it. I really don't get it. So I think, his touchdown pass is probably one of his most impressive ones, but the amount of records that man holds that I don't even know about, it's probably 2-3 pages long of just lists of records that guy holds, just because of his longevity.
Exactly. And he probably has like another 2 or 3 pages of just Super Bowl records because of his longevity and how many he's been to.
Yeah. No, so another record in football I'd say is probably O.J. Simpson's 143 rushing yards per game, averaged for a whole season. And he just did this in 14 games, so it's a little bit of a different era. But that would also made him the first player ever to reach 2,000 yards in a season. In today's game, according to Bleacher Report themselves, it would take a running back would need approximately 2,291 yards to equal OJ's feat, which would be almost 200 more than the current single season record. OJ, that record OJ holds is just at this point, I don't know if it's necessarily because of like the change in the era and like how the numbers correlate, but I think just even if it was a 14 game season, I don't think that's something that anybody could touch. It's insane.
Definitely, yeah. You keep trying to like give guys opportunities, but that OJ was playing in an era where you ran the ball almost every play. Like we're in an era of quarterbacks now, and it makes for exciting football. So it's just making it even harder for running backs to come close to OJ Simpson and some of the other great running backs records.
Absolutely. So one thing I know about you is that you're a big fan of baseball. Do you have any records off the top of your mind that you think are unbreakable?
Oh, well, I'm so glad you asked. Yeah. So the award that's given to the best pitcher in baseball, as you know, is called the Cy Young Award. And Cy Young just has so many records that will remain unbroken. And the one I want to highlight is his 511 wins over his career. And that is just insane, especially in today where the game is all about rotating guys, taking them out, only keeping them in for as little as possible. When Cy Young pitched, he pitched, and he pitched like 3-4 times, every 1 or 2 weeks, where instead of you're on a rotation of 5 guys now, Cy Young was pitching a lot more often in the whole game, giving him a chance to get those wins back. So right now, an elite pitcher probably gets about 20 to 25 wins a season. That means to get to 511, they would have to play at least 21 seasons, which is just crazy if they are averaging elite numbers every year.
Because there's people out there who could play that long, like hypothetically, because that's still like an anomaly when it comes to the average like pro athlete. Yeah. But like to be elite for that long, I don't know if that. I don't think that's possible.
Exactly. Yeah, you're not pitching into your 40s, still winning 25 games when you were winning 25 games as a rookie at 21. Like it's just not happening.
Yeah.
It's not, especially with the way managing thinks now. You're going to be yanked if you give up more than 3 runs.
Absolutely. Well, I think a really cool record is Cal Ripken Jr.'s 2,632 straight games played. Back then, everybody called him Iron Man because he played. He just didn't stop. He just played straight forever. The only person ever that could, I guess you could say, came close was Miguel Tejeda's 1,152 games. But I mean, that's not even half.
Not even half, yeah.
and
Ripken was something else.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't imagine that many in a row. I mean, that just doesn't happen in sports anymore because I think a lot of that now is the modern era. We have more understanding of like the body and medical procedures and like, okay, you got to take care of yourself if you want that longevity. But even then, there's still people who get past it while playing through injuries. Because, I mean, if you're telling me he played 2,632 games without having one day where he was feeling sore, he was hurting, it's just there's no way.
There's no way. He was definitely sore. Plus, I mean, guys, if they're going to play that many games, they're going to go through slumps. So the fact that the manager never thought, Cal isn't seeing the ball right now, let me put somebody else in because we need to win this game. That's insane. So you either had no slumps or you just always trust him to get out of it, and some guys just can't get out of it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you saw recently, Joey Votto, first baseman for the Cincinnati Reds, tweeted out, being in a slump is like being in a labyrinth where you can't find the way out. And then when you do get out, you're in another maze. And it's like, whoa, Joey, come on. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. Please be a little happier. But still, guys will go through those slumps, and they'll get frustrated, and in their head, it's up to the manager to be like, hey, sit down for a game. Let's figure this out and do that. So that's why I don't think that record will ever be touched, ever.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree. One last one that comes to mind for baseball for me is Ichiro's 262 hits in 2004, like one of the most historic runs in baseball, like crazy season, absolutely nuts. He had 704 hits that season, which also automatically puts him in the top 4 for the most hits ever. But or not 700 hits, 700 bats. Puts him into the top 4 of the most bats in an entire season, but 262 hits. I mean, it's a different era of baseball, but I don't think that's something that will ever even come close to in a single season.
Exactly. And, if you look at his stats, he probably didn't even get to close to 262 either. It's just, a spectacular season, in a great career. Not to put down Ichiro. That was a great career, but that was just a spectacular season that will never be matched.
Absolutely.
It's just that easy.
Yeah. Well, you've made some really good points. But now that we've talked about some of these crazy records, out of all of them, is there one that you think is the most unbreakable record?
The most unbreakable record. If I had to pick a single one,
yes,
I would have to go with Cy Young's 511 wins. Just the sheer number of how long you would have to stay elite to reach that, I think, is crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. I think. I still think, in my personal opinion, the most unbreakable. And you're a baseball fan at heart. I'm a basketball, so there is some bias. But Wilt Chamberlain's 50 points per game. There's people who drop, like people go crazy when they go on. This year, DeMar DeRozan had a few 30 points per game, like in a row, and people went nuts. So for someone to average 50 for a season would break sports. I don't think that's something that will ever happen anytime soon. But however, I do think what you've mentioned, that record is probably one of the most impressive feats in all of sports history.
Exactly. There is one record to be on the lookout, though. It's the last of the big 4 we haven't talked about, hockey.
Gotcha.
As you know, the great one, Wayne Gretzky, he has the career number in goals at 894, which for a long time people said was never going to be reached. That was unbreakable. However, it does look like Alexander Ovechkin could maybe catch that in the next 2 to 3 years. So it'll definitely be exciting to see if Ovi can keep up his pace and maybe break 894 and dethrone the great one. So
yeah, no, that would be super crazy to see. And, the modern era of sports is incredible to see, with just how much things have changed across the entire board. And it's also crazy to see the amount of records that are being just smashed and destroyed that we thought were unbreakable. I mean, 2016, Russell Westbrook averaged a triple-double. Who would have thought? I wouldn't have. I would have said it would never happen again.
Either.
Stuff like that, it's just happening across all the sports. And I think a lot of that is just, being able to watch tapes, the internet, studying, analytics. It's changing how people think and play the game. Any game.
Exactly.
And you've made a lot of great points, and I've had a lot of fun talking to you, but we are reaching the end of our show. But before I go ahead and wrap things up here, do you have any final remarks that you'd like to share to our guests today?
Just thank you so much for having me on. It's been a blast to be reaching out to YSN again. I think this podcast is awesome. Love what you're doing. You're going to go very far, Andrew. And so thank you for having me on, and let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I just want to thank you again, though, for joining me today. But before I let you go, one last thing. Is there any way my audience can find or follow you online?
Yes. My main social media is Twitter. You can follow me at Cooper_Huskey. Pretty easy. And yeah, Twitter is what I usually use to connect. But if you find me on any other platform, feel free to reach out, and let's get cracking. If anybody wants to reach out on LinkedIn, I would be very appreciative.
Hey, it sounds great. So everybody who's watching or listening today, make sure to follow our fantastic guest today, Cooper Huskey. That's it, though. That's our show for today. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Teen Sports Podcast Network Illinois. Be sure to follow us on social media at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, all at TSPN Podcast. I'm your host of the Teen Sports Podcast Network Illinois, Andrew Kish. Thanks for tuning in.